Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Collin Whitchurch. We're back for another division preview. Today, we're going to be talking about the National League West. This is the fifth of six division previews. All we have left is the AL West. So be sure to check out your podcast feed for our other division previews. And I'm joined today, as usual, by Sean Zerillo and also a special guest, my old boss, editor-in-chief of Baseball Prospectus Craig Goldstein is here to help us break down the NL West. Craig, thanks for being here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Craig, for those not familiar, a very adamant Los Angeles Dodgers fan, so makes sense to have him come and help break down this division. From a division race standpoint, probably the least interesting division in baseball, but hey, they made it kind of interesting last year. We'll see. Before we jump in, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. Again, as a reminder, keep an eye out for all our division previews leading up to opening day. Easiest way to stay caught up is to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We'll also have a long shot props episode, a season-long player props episode, and an opening day preview. Then during the season payoff pitch, we'll have best bets on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Friday mornings on Action Network's YouTube page, so you'll want to subscribe over there too. We'll be live every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday on YouTube at, I believe, 10 a.m. Eastern. Finally, if you like what you're hearing, or even if you don't, please give us a 5-star rating and review. We really appreciate all the feedback, negative or positive, as long as the review is 5 stars. This is the most important time of the year for reviews to help us out. So we really appreciate that. But without further preamble, let's jump into the NL West. We will go in order of division odds for which teams we choose. So we will start right up at the top with the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're minus 650 to win the NL West over at DraftKings. Their win total is sitting at 102.5. Last year, of course, World Series champs, two-time defending World Series champs, underperformed in the regular season, 93 and 69. Their PYFAG was 95 wins. Their public range on win total is sitting around 98 to 104. Off-season, they added two guys, really two big guys, Kyle Tucker, Edwin Diaz on this roster now. In terms of guys out the door, Kirby Yates, Anthony Banda, and Craig Goldstein favorite Michael Conforto is out of town as well. Sean Zerillo, I will start with you. This is one of the teams. I don't know if it's toughest to handicap or easiest to handicap because of how high they are every year, but where are you at on the Dodgers this year?
Yeah, I don't have like a ton of takes on this division in general. As you said, it's one of the more difficult divisions to have some major takes on unless you think a team like Arizona is going to make the playoffs. I do have one team that I'm strongly against here. Not many teams I'm in love with. One that I like slightly more than market, I would say. But the Dodgers, very much in line with the market. I make their win total 101. As you said, the range of projections out there between 98 and 103.6. I'll let Craig speak to that Pacoda projection, which is the highest in the market. I believe the only one higher than their actual listed total of 102.5. So it is a very high bar to clear. I think the last time we checked in on it, teams with a listed win total higher than 100 go under like 80% of the time. I haven't rerun that in the past couple of years, but prior to like 2 years ago, and I believe the Dodgers are the only team projected for 100 wins the past couple of years anyway. But 2 years ago, I think it had been like an 80% clip, and I believe the Dodgers might have failed to do that the past 2 years. So it's very tough to get to 100 plus wins. This Dodger team is super loaded. They added two best free agents, so I'm not really interested in betting against that happening, and I do have them at 101, so there's no actual value either. What I do find interesting is you said they're minus 625 to make the playoffs or to win the division. I make them minus 700. The public projections, though, average out to about minus 3,600. And I know Derek Carty gave out the Dodgers minus 600 as one of his best bets. And, you know, if you make the projection minus 3,500, I think that's certainly justifiable. When I make it minus 700, it really isn't. My main takeaway here, though, is when I comb through all the leader markets, the milestone markets, etc., I found much more value in general in the milestone markets, you know, the 30-plus homer, 40-plus homer, than betting the home run leader outright. But the one guy who did show my biggest edges for outrights was Shohei Ohtani, home run leader, and Shohei Ohtani, RBI leader. I make those bets about plus 420 and plus 665. I got plus 500 and plus 1400. So the RBI leader is a bigger edge. I guess the question is whether they sit him a little bit more this year since he's going to be pitching regularly as opposed to hitting. But by and large, the median projections, the highest median projections out there, still prefer Ohtani to Judge in the RBI leader market and say he's likeliest to lead the league. So definitely on those two bets for Ohtani. I also bet Kyle Tucker 30 plus and 40 plus home runs. This is something I kind of had an angle into last year. His power ticked up 2 years ago. Obviously dealt with the injuries, the back injury and stuff last year, but I do rate him as essentially the second best player on the Dodgers now. And the 40 plus milestone, which is 8-1, is very much within reach. I also like Mookie to get back to 90 plus ribbies as well at a nice plus money figure. So a bunch of positive bets on Dodgers hitters, but really no main takeaways on the team futures.
Yeah, I think you need to get creative when betting the Dodgers for the most part. Looking at all the player projections, looking at all the projection systems on kind of over-unders for individual players actually shows value on. There was one book that was hanging an under 50.5 on Shohei Ohtani's home run total. And I know that's like the least fun bet you can possibly make is betting against Ohtani, but everyone essentially has him in like the 47 to 49 range. So I did dabble it in that under 50.5. Most sports books have him at 47, 48, 49 homers, so right in line. The one creative way I got on betting the Dodgers, and Craig, I think you have a similar angle on them, is I bet them specifically to reach the LCS at minus 170. I feel like that's a pretty safe way to go about things, depending on their LDS matchups. You hate betting these minus monies, significant minus monies preseason. You're tying up your money long term on potentially a best of 5 series in October, but like, if you don't want to go so far as to bet into their World Series market, their pennant market, what have you, and you also don't want to pay the significant juice of them winning the division or making the playoffs, I just think reaching the LCS minus 170. So that's probably my best angle at betting the Dodgers. Craig, what do you think about your Los Angeles Dodgers?
Yeah, it's tough to find value on them, and just because of how much the public knows about them, and they back it up in a lot of ways. I do think, just in terms of the win total, I'd lean towards the under. I think if they cared at all about the regular season, you could easily see them win over any of these kind of the public range that you talked about, 98 to 104. We are the 104 at BP. Pacoda has that. We've been pretty high on them the last few years. Obviously, as Sean mentioned, they've fallen short of that. I think some of that is just they kept Tanner Scott in the closer role all year, and they lost games because of it, right? And if they cared, if they were being pushed they were kind of being pushed for the division, but it's not something that they prioritize, and so I think it's a lot easier to see them falling short of this than exceeding it, which is usually the case, as Sean is saying, with triple-digit win teams or projections. I think you're going to find more value going against them or having them fall short in some sort of ways. I think the one thing that I saw that was kind of interesting to me was this team to take the second seed in the NL playoffs. It was plus 350 at Fangraphs. It's very specific. I don't love doing that preseason necessarily because obviously they ended up the third seed. They could end up third seed and not pay that off. So that's not ideal. But we watched Milwaukee beat them in the regular season play. We watched Philadelphia beat them last year for the regular season record. So I think there are ways for that to pay off, and there's just so much. They just it's such an advantage to take the top spot that there's just not enough value there. So I think it's more interesting to take those and a lot more value overall.
Craig, since you're only on this divisional pod and you're not on our other divisions, if the Dodgers do not finish with the best record in baseball, what team do you like to surpass them? Is it an AL team? Is it another NL team? Which team are you thinking?
Yeah, I think either Toronto or New York in the AL. Those are the other two. They're not. The Seattle is our second highest projected team. I'm not as confident in that as Pacoda is. I think that's more of a messy division. I like what Seattle's done in general, but I think the Yankees and Toronto both have significant value, and their win totals are kind of projected a little lower because of the depth in that division overall. Sure. And that the way these things tend to play out is one of them, or last year, both of them obviously ended up the same amount of wins, but are able to separate from the pack and might end up with the best record in baseball overall. But that's where I tend to be looking.
Yeah, I would just say, you're thinking them like second seed, third seed. If you think they're going to finish second or third seed, I would take shots on another team to finish with the best record. So that's,
great point.
I think that's a good look at, whoever you like to win the AL East could be a good pick for that.
I gave out on our AL Central pod. I gave out the long shot Tigers at I think 45-1
Mhm.
to finish with the
Yeah,
best record. We haven't
absolutely.
the one division we haven't talked about is the AL West. Craig brought up the Mariners. I think it's not necessarily a spoiler to say because it's out there on ActionNetwork.com that Sean is incredibly high on the Mariners this year. So he's in line with Pacoda. The one thing that Craig and I were talking offline before we started recording, Sean, and we haven't gotten a lot into like game to game projections. This is more big picture stuff, but the Dodgers were one of the least profitable teams to bet on in baseball
Mm.
last year. They were the seventh least profitable. In fact, if you bet $100 on all of their games last year, you would have ended the year down more than $1,300. The only teams that were worse than them were mostly bottom feeders: the Rockies, Twins, Braves, Mets, White Sox, Rays. If you wagered $100 on the Dodgers' opponent every single game last year, you'd have won $424. That was the fifth most profitable team to bet against. Do you have any thoughts there, Sean, on just kind of, I mean, the Dodgers have proven that they prioritize long-term health over regular season success, right? It almost cost them the division title last year, but it paid off in the long run. They had a full stable of healthy pitchers for October, and it took them to the World Series.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. Like, I mean, the Dodgers, the Yankees, those are name brand teams that people talk about. Public teams in football, teams that are likely to attract betting attention, kind of regardless of who they're playing, what the matchup is, just because they're popular teams. The Chiefs, Mahomes, forever, and I think the Dodgers kind of fall into that bucket where people will not even look at who the pitcher is; they'll just kind of put them in a parlay for that night because there's another bet they like on the board at minus 160, and they see Dodgers minus 300, and they're like, all right, let's get this to even money, just stick them together. And that's not necessarily the best strategy because you're not compounding an edge there if there is no edge on the Dodgers. So yeah, I think it's purely just there's going to be a little bit more juice factored into their line on any given day. If Ohtani's known not to be in the lineup, you may get a little bit more of a fair price on them because they will maybe over adjust the line with him out. But that might not even be the case considering all the stars that they have on that roster. So yeah, I think it's just purely assume there's not value on the Dodgers unless there's something else you can prove, or unless my model is telling you that there is, and that's going to be a pretty rare case. So just like a public team kind of being overvalued and over-vigged on a daily basis.
All right, let's move on to the team projected with the second best odds to win the NL West, the San Diego Padres, plus 900 to win the NL West. Again, they came just a couple wins shy of the Dodgers last year. They won 90 games. This year, their win total down at 83.5. Public range 77 to 81. So it seems like maybe a consensus under. We'll see where Sean's at on this team. Off-season, more notable losses than additions. They added Sungmun Song from Korea, Miguel Andahar, Ty Adcock, Griffin Canning, Nick Castellanos late in the offseason. Ty France, Herman Marquez, Walker Buehler, just an array of old and injured and washed up guys. Out the door, most famously, was Dylan Cease. Luis Arias is gone, along with Robert Suarez and Ryan O'Hearn. One thing I was interested about, I wish I could find a book that would hang over under 1.5 NL West teams to finish above 500, because the Padres are sitting right now at 83.5. Every other team is projected to finish at 500 or right below. But the Padres are the one team, it seems like, that has at least a little bit of playoff juice. Sean, are you in line with the public projections here in looking under on this team, or where are you?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite win total unders and bets to miss the playoffs. I make the Padres minus 135 to miss the playoffs. You can get plus 135 on that bet. I think there should be a minus sign instead of a plus sign in front of that number. I have the Padres finishing third in the division. We'll get to the team I like to finish second. I think you probably guess who it is, but Padres under 85.5, and then the miss the playoffs bet. I make their number 82.9, so I would take the under down to about 85. And I would take the miss the playoffs bet at any plus money number. Even minus 110 is probably fine. I believe Pacoda has them at minus 200 to miss the playoffs. So I'm hopefully in alignment with Craig on this, because I definitely trust that number. I think I really do not like this team. It's not only the projections, right? Because all we do here is talk about the math. We're very math heavy. It's the ownership battle and the fact that I think AJ Preller is out of assets. They lost all the guys you mentioned, they brought in essentially nobody other than guys on minor league deals or invites to spring training. Even last year, I feel like they signed a bunch of guys near the end for small money. They were just kind of patient in the market. But yeah, it's a combination of a lack of talent influx and then also a lack of minor league depth that they could either bring up to supplement the roster or trade for other pieces like they did last year with Leo DeVree for Mason Miller. The DeVree trade was really concerning to me, not just because I thought it was bad value trying to trade a prospect like that for however many years you get a Mason Miller, but more so, I think it's a red flag that AJ Preller is out of assets because other than Ethan Salas, unless he recovers his prospect status and AJ decides that he can trade him too, which I doubt he would trade a 17-year-old catcher who's already playing in A-ball. I didn't think he'd trade DeVree either, though, but really it speaks to me that they're running out of assets, and I don't know what he has to flip for pieces of need this year. I think if anything, Tatis is going to be a Met or something like that. I think you start seeing them potentially sell pieces, and I think this could go really south for them by the end of July because, again, the ownership difficulties that they're having, the battle over ownership, which seems like it may have been settled and ultimately gone to one side. I'm not sure if the former family or the former side of the family that had control of the team is still challenging it, but regardless, it doesn't seem like the current controlling owners are that interested in spending. So under and miss the playoffs on the Padres, among my favorite bets for 2026.
Craig, are you in line here with what Pacoda's saying? I think it's interesting. You look at this almost seems like a team that might be overvalued because of the name brand. Like it's very similar to last year where it's kind of a stars and scrubs approach. It's hard to bet against this team when you look at the top of the lineup and you see Tatis, Machado, Jackson Merrill, Xander Bogaerts, once upon a time, a brand name. By the way, Ethan Salas is almost 20 at this point, which is
really?
Time catches up with us all.
Flying by. My dog's 4, so I guess that makes sense. I think they came up around the same time. So.
And in terms of the prospects, and Craig, you can correct me if I'm wrong here too. I believe that our Baseball Prospectus's lead prospect writer, Jeffrey Paternostro, said this is the worst system in baseball and like the worst in some time. I feel like with all of the pieces they've traded away.
There's always recent Angels vintages, but yeah, I mean, it's up there.
Yeah. So where are you at on the Padres this year?
Yeah, I agree with basically everything Sean just said. I do agree that there's probably some name value. You look at the top line names of Tatis and Machado and stuff like that in terms of why they get the attention that they do. But the depth is just horrifying. And, I mean, look, you listed all the names that they brought in, and it's like we're talking about Ty Adcock and Dyson Acosta. Like, this is not these are not needle movers, at least in a good way. I do think the Griffin Canning, the thing about Preller is he's very much the Breaking Bad, he can't keep getting away with it, meme going. Like, yeah. I agree with everything Sean said about the not having any assets left to move and all of that kind of stuff, except he seems to just find something to move every year, right? I thought the Griffin Canning signing was pretty savvy. Honestly, he's got an Achilles injury. It's not an arm. He's injured all the time, but it's not an arm injury this time. He's supposed to be back relatively early in the year. He was breaking out for the Mets, at least relatively, right, into like a mid-rotation starter rather than back-end guy. So, and they really, every single addition that they make, it's kind of easy to like because what they had there was nothing, or possibly even less than nothing. So like every single start that Griffin Canning makes is a huge jump over the replacement player that they had potentially in there, right? Like every time they don't need to start Randy Vasquez is a huge win for them. But at the same time, like they are filling that with German Marquez. I don't know if he's got anything left in the tank. The rotation is terrifying. They trade the depth guys that they even scrounge up, right? Ryan Berger and Steven Kolek last year that were not bad. And they traded them to the Royals for Freddie Fermin, who was a massive improvement over what they had because they have nothing. They constantly have nothing. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it has to stop working at some point. They didn't make the playoffs last year, so you could argue it stopped working, but it still seemed like they were better than they had any right to be in a lot of ways. Or did they? I've already lost my mind. Maybe they made the playoffs. They made the playoffs and lost to the Cubs in the first round. Lost to the Cubs. Yeah. Okay, that was it. I apologize. The wild card. It's been a lot a lot's going on. But,
Yes.
eventually it seems like it's not going to pay off for them. So I do think the downside is tremendous. And I do agree the ownership situation has been relevant and is relevant, and that some sort of major sell-off could come at any given time. And so you have to factor that in. And I think the upside is more what the line is here. If you're talking about 83, 84, 85 wins, something like that, that's the upside to me. I don't think this is a 90-win team again. I don't think Nick Pivetta is going to. He was incredible last year, right? Like that's a big part of their success. I don't think he's likely to. I'm not saying he's bad, but I don't think he's likely to repeat the year he had last year. So there are a lot of ways this goes south, and fewer ways it ends up in a positive place for them. So I think that's where I'd end up in the same place that we're talking.
Yeah, they need Michael King and Joe Musgrove to stay healthy, and not just those guys have
terrifying
in recent years. So it's a house of cards without much depth behind it, and no prospects to call upon or trade. It seems like a pretty safe under.
Yeah, just one last other thing is like I thought for sure they'd be moving on from Pivetta, because the way they signed and Michael King, I thought they would trade Michael King last year, because the way they signed those deals were like really cheap money, $1 million or $4 million early, I think respectively, in the first year of the deal. And then it balloons to like $14-15 million. King's obviously 25 at this point, but they were backloading those deals in such a way that made it seem really likely that they would trade them. They didn't, because I think they were in it, but I think they're waiting for that summer that they're not fully in it, and then they're just going to divest themselves as much as they can.
Yeah, they're Randy Vasquez, by the way, currently in the starting five on roster resources, which is just a bad sign. And then the depth or lack of depth that you talked about behind is just like an exercise in remembering some guys. Like JP Sears and Kyle Harder probably next up, but then you have Walker Buehler, you have Marco Gonzalez, you have Tristan McKenzie, all there on NRIs.
Yep.
It's interesting. I'll say the only bet I have logged on the Padres this year, I'm in line with the under. Again, just the quality of the rest of the division couldn't get me to like put that bet down as an official play for me. But from a player prop perspective, I do like Fernando Tatis Jr. over 26.5 home runs. I think all the projection systems have him at least 28, maybe some to 30 or more. So that's the one player prop that I'm on is Tatis homers. Sean, did you mention Tatis, or did you want to mention Tatis? You have a bet on him as well, don't you?
Yeah, I have his 30+ milestone. I know there's been a lot of talk about his power reduction since the steroid suspension. I think I make him about a coin flip to get the 30+ home runs, and you can get plus 145 out there. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't matter if he switches leagues or gets traded to a different team, that bet still would be action. So my thought was just watching the WBC. Him and Soto seem like they are absolute best buds. They're constantly next to one another and hanging out. And the Mets don't really have an opening in right field because we have Mike Tauchman and Carson Benj kind of competing for that spot at the moment. And Benj was the guy drafted by Stearns. Unlike the other prospects he's traded away, he didn't draft Jet Williams or acquire Jet Williams, so he was happy to move off of Acuna and Williams, the guys he didn't acquire. He did draft Benj, so I don't think trading Benj for Tatis or something like that is necessarily imminent, but there have been some rumblings about Tatis maybe ending up as a Met in the future. And Luis Robert's only here on a 1-year deal. It's not like Tatis could play center field, but maybe there's a rejuggling of the outfield next year and Tatis ends up as a Met. I just, for some reason, envision that happening.
If Luis Robert rebounds and the Mets end up with an outfield of Luis Robert and Fernando Tatis Jr., I don't think I'll ever be able to watch a Mets game again.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough for you.
All right, let's move on to the third.
And Soto,
team.
by the way.
Yeah, and Soto. Not that the White Sox were ever going to get him, but anyway, I just had to cash people's tickets on over/under White Sox references for me on an NL West preview pod. Let's move on to the San Francisco Giants, 17-1 to win the NL West. They went 81-81 last year. They were the most 81-81 win team, or 81-81 team in history, although their Pythak had them at 83 wins. And this year, 80.5. So will they finish 500 or will they finish below? Public range is kind of wide, 76-83. They added Harrison Bader, Luis Ariz, Tyler Mahle, Adrian Hauser, some depth pieces, Jason Foley in there. Only losses pretty much Justin Verlander and Andrew Kisner. I have no idea how to say his name. Their biggest offseason move was their managerial hire, which was surprising to many. In Tony Vitello, they got brought in from the collegiate ranks. He was the University of Tennessee manager. Buster Posey making waves by doing something no one's ever done before in hiring a manager. This is the one team in the division that I don't have a bet on. I don't have any feel for in the props market, anything like that. So Sean, I'll leave it to you first. Where are you at on the Giants this year?
I'm higher than the highest projection out there. Fangraphs at 82.5. I'm at 83.7. So I like the Giants a little bit more than the market. Not enough to bet the over, but I did bet them to finish second in the division. And I like that bet because you could still cash it even if they don't make the playoffs. I do show value on their odds to make the playoffs. Plus 136. You can get as high as plus 215. But you can get plus 290 on the Giants to finish in second. I like that down to about plus 250. Again, I don't see more than 2 playoff teams in this division. I'm down on the Padres. I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to be a playoff team, which means I like the Giants. If there is a second team in this division to make it, it's probably the Giants, and I show value on that number, but just bet them at plus 290 to finish second, even if they don't make the playoffs. If the Mets, Phillies, Braves all get in together, or if 2 NL Central teams and 2 NL East teams get in together, that way you're not sweating too hard about there not being enough spots for the Giants. Because again, my projection is at 83.7. You probably need 85, 86 wins in order to make the wild card. So can still hit that bet without them actually getting to the postseason. In terms of player bets, it's all Logan Webb for me here. If Logan Webb is able to sustain the strikeout rate or regain the strikeout rate that he had in the first half of last year and maintain the volume that he had, he can get to 230 strikeouts. I know it sounds crazy for Logan Webb, but there's so much volume of innings, and the strikeout rate did go up in the first half enough last year that he is capable of threatening that lead. And I think he's the biggest threat to the NL Cy Young. If Paul Skeens ends up going down, just the WAR is always like second or third. It always projects second or third in the NL. And again, if you add strikeouts into that profile, he's going to be right there at the end of the year. I also have him wins leader, 20-1 as well. I make him about 14-1. The most I found with wins leader, because it's really fun to project, but also very difficult because there's so much variance. But it's also nice to bet because the cap on where you can put the leaders is about 20, 21, 22. I found looking back that quality starts are almost just as predictive for wins as wins are, which sounds wild, but like the correlation level on quality starts to wins leader was basically the same as the correlation from actual wins to the wins leader. So quality starts is very predictive for getting wins. It just kind of comes down to your offense. The Giants offense should be a little bit better this year. So I like Webb for wins leader, 220 plus strikeouts, 230 plus strikeouts, and then also NL Cy Young. I bet on this guy almost every year. He is a permanent bridesmaid. He may get Paul Skeens, may need Paul Skeens to get hurt in order to actually win the thing. But there's a number of ways I want to bet on Logan Webb this year, who just got lit up by, was it Brazil or Mexico? So that wasn't the best look. I think it was Brazil. But hopefully on track once the regular season starts.
Craig, any thoughts here on your favorite team's arch rivals, the managerial change, Logan Webb? I mean, I love Logan Webb. I love the strikeouts. I think that he made some interesting changes last year to his profile to increase that strikeout rate. Are you a believer in Webb? Are you a believer in the Giants?
Huge believer in Webb. Our WARP system, our wins above replacement system has always loved him. It's the volume of innings that Sean is talking about is dead on, and it's so valuable these days. I really honestly think, like you said, he's always surprised me. He needs to win one. Zach Wheeler needs to win one. I hope he comes back healthy at some point. These guys are they routinely put up seasons that are deserving of it, and they get eclipsed, which is a bummer. And I'm not saying the other guys don't deserve it, but those two guys, to me, just in terms of volume of innings and the quality of the output, I love the bets that you're talking about, Sean. I think what I kept thinking throughout what you were saying was he just gives you a lot of outs, which is literally true. He gets a lot of outs, right? Because he throws so many innings. But I'm thinking of it obviously in the kind of the poker term. He gives you a lot of outs in terms of the strikeouts because he compiles so many innings that there are a lot of ways to get there. The one drawback I could think of in the time you were talking is we've got the ABS challenge system coming in play, right? We know Patrick Bailey is by far the best framer outside of Austin Hedges, who doesn't play enough, and understandably so. My question is, how many of those, I didn't look into this, but how many of those strikeouts are looking like how much can be put to Bailey's framing capabilities? And the interesting thing is we just recorded on my podcast our NL West preview as well, and Patrick Dubuque, one of my writers and editors, mentioned something which I had not been tracking, but Patrick Bailey is like the best challenger thus far in spring training, both as a catcher and as a batter. So it might not be something that actually impacts this, but it's something to think about in terms of how things might get impacted, because he is such a good framer overall, and usually that is to his pitcher's benefit, not the batter's benefit. We'll see if batters are able to kind of counteract that using the challenge system. I don't know, but that's the only negative I could think of in terms of these Logan Webb bets. I love them. The only other downside I could think of is our projection ticked them up to 82 and 80 going into the last couple of days. I loved seeing them at 81 and 81. That's just who they are as a team to me, as an ethos. But I agree with what Sean's saying. I think they are the second best team in this division. The floor is incredibly high for this team. I just don't think they're going to drop much below that. I don't know what the ceiling is, which is why it's easy to see them at 500 as they have been. But the floor is really high, and I do think that it's very, I don't want to say very likely, but I think it's pretty likely they end up better than San Diego and Arizona, who I'm going to agree with Sean on as well. So yeah, I think this is a solid team. I don't know what the ceiling is, but it's an absolutely solid team. And I had not seen the bet you talked about for them at second place. I love that. I think that's a great value for sure.
The Patrick Bailey challenge stuff, the skills translation from framing to eyesight with challenges is astounding. Does this guy have like 10-10 vision? Can we check into Patrick Bailey's like eyes to see what's going on in there? The other thing that concerned me, Craig, obviously besides the ABS, which is a really good shout out by you, their defensive infield is terrible. Devers at first base, Luis Arias back at second base, which has gone so well in the past. Adamas's metrics have tanked at shortstop. Chapman's obviously great, but 3 of the 4 defenders are probably big negatives for him. And with the amount of ground balls, I could certainly see the hits piling up, the whip getting a little bit higher, the ERA inflating as a result. So that's my main concern. Also, I don't know what to expect from Vitello. I didn't really watch college baseball in the past few years, so I don't know like what the controversy around him was or what the polarizing thing around him was. Are you guys aware of like the fact that he has like a very polarizing reputation and what that is a result of? Because I don't.
I think some of it is just the fact that he's going straight from college to the pros. He never played professionally, which is something, we've seen matters to Nick Castellanos, at least. Maybe not everyone else, but I think it's also that college coaches, especially really successful college coaches, tend to be very control oriented. They get to run the program. That's not how a major league manager really operates. They're not the manager and the GM, which is kind of the college mold. I'm not a huge college person either, so I don't want to speak too out of pocket, but that's the general vibe of it. And I do wonder, he's going to be dealing with adults, right? So the level of control that these guys are used to as coaches is going to be different in a major league clubhouse compared to a college one. I don't know.
I guess the other thing, sorry to interrupt, the other thing that scares me too is Buster Posey's also made comments about not really believing in analytics fully, which that also scares me, considering the era that we're in. So yeah, those are like the two caveats: the defense and the lack of interest in analytics are definitely like concerns for betting a team in 2026.
Yeah, the only you could cut against the grain though and say the defensive concerns might encourage him to strike more guys out. Right. So if he knows he needs to get strikeouts to get outs, maybe that's a bonus on that side. It's bad on the Cy Young front. Maybe it's good on the strikeouts front.
That's a very good point. I love that. Thank you for making me feel more comfortable.
Yeah. One final note on Webb, to Craig's point about Patrick Bailey and the ABS. I looked up while you guys were talking. Called strike percentage last year, Logan Webb 19.7%, the highest in the majors. By 0.6. Will Warren was second. So Very
I wonder
interesting.
if that's partially reputation based as well, right?
Absolutely.
And look, some of that is Logan Webb is really good.
Yeah. It's probably reputation based because Kyle Hendricks was 4th.
But again, he's a control artist, right? So some of this is Logan Webb knows how to spot the ball. Some of it is that Patrick Bailey is a wizard back there.
Yeah. With Major League Baseball right around the corner, now is the perfect time to get yourself an Action Pro account and get real-time pick alerts from experts like Sean Zerillo. Also access to Sean Kerner's strikeout prop projections and more. Right now, subscribers can get $20 off a year of Action Pro at actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20. That's promo code POD20 for $20 off an entire year, so you'll be covered for upcoming March Madness, the rest of this NBA season, of course, the upcoming MLB season, plus next college football and NFL seasons. So don't wait. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro. Right now, use promo code POD20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right, let's move on to the 4th team in the NL West, the Arizona Diamondbacks, 22-1 to win the NL West. Last year, they went 80-82 with a Pythag of 82-80. So right there in line. Their win total this year is 79.5. The public range is 79 to 83 wins. They had a strange offseason, I think I would call it. They added Nolan Arenado, probably most notably. They brought back Merrill Kelly after trading him at the deadline last year. Mike Soroka is in town. Carlos Santana, Paul Sewald, Taylor Clark. A lot of names where if it were 2019, I'd be a much bigger fan of some of these additions. They sent out of town Jake McCarthy, Blaze Alexander, Kyle Backus. Sean, you and I recorded an NL Central preview yesterday where I kind of went against the projections on the Pirates, talked about why I was down on them this year. The projection systems are mostly high on the Diamondbacks this year. I'll let you speak to whether you agree with that or not. But this is my favorite bet in the division is under 79.5 wins on the Diamondbacks this year. I also have Diamondbacks to miss the playoffs at minus 250, which I think there's value on. They're minus 250 to miss the playoffs at DraftKings, and that number is significantly different than some other sports books. I think FanDuel is minus 350, minus 330, something like that. So really like the odds on the Diamondbacks to miss the playoffs here. I just don't see it with this team. Like, their rotation, they did not fix it all. They're not going to have Corbin Burns this year. Zach Gallen is back as their frontline starter. We saw all the warts that he brought last year. We saw all the warts on Eduardo Rodriguez and Brandon Pfaadt. Mike Soroka, I think, proved last year that he's much more effective in relief, but he's going to be in their rotation. Ryan Nelson, I don't have much to say about him. He's fine. Will we see, another MVP caliber year out of Geraldo Perdomo? Will they trade Ketel Marte? They were talking about it all winter. So I just think there are a lot of warts on this team. I think it's pretty significantly a below average team. I think it's pretty obviously the 4th best team in this division. So I'm down on Arizona this year, like them under 79.5 wins, like them to miss the playoffs. Where are you at on them?
Yeah, I would take that minus 250 to miss the playoffs. That's definitely off market. I make it minus 377. Pacoda would make it minus 400 to miss. Oopsie is even higher. They're at 86%. So take a minus 250 to miss the playoffs. Absolutely. I don't think this is a playoff team. And I kind of agree with you. I'm at 79.2 on their win total, so under by 0.3 wins. But I if I had to choose a direction, it's definitely under on this team as well. Just not high on Nolan Arenado at this point of his career. Jordan Lawler, who's their projected opening day center fielder. 1, that's a positional change. 2, he can't stay healthy. And 3, I've mentioned so many times this preseason that center field is the second most likely position for a person to get injured at. So I don't know why he's not playing third base as opposed to playing center field, I guess, because they traded for Arenado, who, again, I think might be washed. So, interesting fit for this D-backs team. When Gabriel Moreno gets hurt, too, they're much worse in general because he kind of provides a Alejandro Kirk level of defensive value to their pitching staff as well. So definitely watch their quality if Moreno ends up getting hurt, because I view them as a much different team without him than with him. I don't mind the starting rotation. Most of the names there, it's the bullpen that really concerns me. I think this could be one of the worst bullpens in baseball, along with the Twins. And for that reason, I don't think they're going to close out many games. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this as well. I'm glad you brought it up with Ketel Marte, Collin, because I was on the favorites last week and they asked me who I think the likeliest or the best player who's likely to get traded this year. I said, if it's not Skubal, it's Ketel Marte because of the way last year ended, the rumblings they've had this offseason, and then certainly the likelihood that they're underwater around the trade deadline. So Ketel Marte, I do have under 28 and a half home runs, not only because the projections say, but also I think he may be dealing with some, mental frustration this year if he's in trade rumors or playing for a bad team and may end up getting shut down at some point near the end of the season. So under 28 and a half homers for Ketel Marte, one of the only two bets I have on this team. The other one is Zach Gallen wins leader. Because as I said, quality starts really correlate very highly with wins. Not that I expect the Diamondbacks to be a good team, but Zach Gallen, with the amount he pitches deep into games, will put himself in positions to win a lot of games. So 60-1 on Gallen for wins leader. I make that closer to 45-1. And then Ketel Marte under 28 and a half homers. I probably like that down to 27 and a half, 26 and a half.
Craig, are you in lockstep here? Where are you at on the Diamondbacks? Are under or are you feeling differently about this team?
No, I'm with. I will. A little bit behind the scenes. We produce the Baseball Prospectus Annual every year, so we have to get projections pretty early, well before we put them up on the site. And when I first saw our projections, it was right around this number. Honestly, it hasn't shifted much over the course of the off season. And I was like, oh, wow, we're really down on the Diamondbacks. Like that's probably a miss. They weren't that bad. They have a lot of interesting young guys, stuff like that. And then every single time I've pulled up their roster resource page or their depth charts or anything like that, I've looked at this team and think, oh, they're dramatically, like they've gotten worse somehow in between every single time. And I absolutely agree. I think today's standings run is at 78.7. So right in line with what Sean is talking about, what you're talking about. I also think the under on this is one of the better bets available. It's another depth issue. So many teams are lacking depth. The Diamondbacks are absolutely one of them. I did not like the Arenado trade for the exact reasons Sean is talking about. It's a weird spot to put Lawler. He seems like he's doing okay in center field. He's certainly hitting this spring. I wouldn't put too much stock into that, but it's better to see than not. I do think it's tough to have him, throw him into a new position. He had played, I think, center field 3 times, and it all happened this offseason in the winter leagues.
That's what the Guardians did with Chase DeLauder, too. When the Guardians threw DeLauder into center field in the playoffs 100%. Last year, it was like, what is going? This guy's never played center field. You're starting him in a playoff game, and he gets hurt all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's a fascinating choice, especially when Alek Thomas is there, and the only thing he can do is actually really go get it in center field. Like, that is what his skill set is. Obviously, the last year, again, they didn't do that well last year, and they have Corbin Carroll put up a 140 OPS plus. They had a great year out of Ketel Marte. They had an unexpected MVP vote-getting season from Geraldo Perdomo. All of these things can go backwards, right? I'm not saying they will. I believe in Corbin Carroll, even with a hamate injury, but that's something to factor in too. You can believe Geraldo Perdomo is legit, and also that he won't put up a 6, 7, 8 win season. And so the pitching staff is absolutely competent, but they don't have much depth beyond the guys there right now. Merrill Kelly is already on the IL with a back issue. He was one of the better starters, even if none of these guys are top of the rotation guys, but there's a lot of mid, and that's fine. You can get through a season like that, but they don't have the names to back it up if anyone does get hurt. And you'd prefer to see Michael Soroka in the bullpen for all the reasons. Sean, this bullpen is terrifying. So I could see, even if the starting pitching is decent, they're going to lose a lot of games from the bullpen just underperforming at this point. So yeah, I think this is sounding a lot like the Padres. There's a lot more ways for them to miss on the negative side than to come through on the positive side. And so I'm absolutely in on the down, on the under on this.
I think what happened is this roster just got mangled. Like, if you add all the guys who are on the IL back to the roster, you could start to make the argument that they could be a playoff team. Justin Martinez, AJ Puck, Lourdes Gurriel, Corbin Burns, Merrill Kelly, like all those guys on roster resource are currently listed under the IL. I don't think many of them are coming back this year. I don't even know if Gurriel is coming back because he had ACL surgery. But yeah, this team just got like absolutely mangled with injuries after the trade deadline. They traded away a bunch of pieces, and then everybody else ended up getting hurt, including their 2 best bullpen arms. So it was a dramatic fall off from the expectations at the start of last year to where they are now.
Yeah, and you look at, again, you start off this lineup with Geraldo Perdomo, Ketel Marte, and Corbin Carroll, and even if you want to include Gabriel Moreno, absolutely fine, and that's really good. And it's like the drawing of that horse that goes from extremely detailed to a stick figure. It's just Pavin Smith, Nolan Arenado, Carlos Santana is here, because even Tyler Locklear, who probably wasn't going to be legit anyway, he's hurt, to Sean's point about the injuries here. And then, even if you get something out of Lawler, it's Lawler and Thomas. It's the back half of this lineup is just atrocious ultimately. And I'm someone who's believed in Smith before a little bit, but you're talking about a league average bat as a DH, as a platoon DH in that situation. It's just that they're so thin beyond the stars, and they don't even have the number of stars that like San Diego does if you want to envision a top end outcome.
Yeah, if any of their current starting five gets hurt, and their current starting five is already pretty shaky, we might see a lot of Jonathan Loaizaga on the mound for this team this year. I wonder if they'll give Dre Jameson another shot at starting, and then you go down their pitching depth. There's nobody, if you look at roster resources at AAA. Tommy Henry,
Gilbert Diaz, Cole Drake,
Mitch Bratt,
those types of guys.
Joe Ross, 33-year-old Joe Ross is apparently on this roster as an NRI. The one name I did want to shout out that I'll be interested in watching this year, if the Diamondbacks give us something worth watching beyond those stars at the top of the lineup, is I'm interested to see when Ryan Waldschmidt debuts. Top prospect outfield. He was someone who I had circled to look out for from a Rookie of the Year betting perspective. I don't think he's listed, at least not at DraftKings, and that's probably because I don't know how early he's going to be up. I don't know if he'll be up early enough to factor in to Rookie of the Year, but we talk about their outfield with Lawler switching positions, with Thomas being basically a glove-only guy. Waldschmidt has been mashing. He made it to Double-A last year. So
that's a great shout.
Yeah,
I really he's a well-rounded skill set guy. Like, he's just above average at everything in terms of the baseline skill set, and he's come out swinging this spring too. Again, you don't have to put a lot of stock into spring stats, but it's just, you'd rather see it than not, and it can influence roster decisions. Even if he doesn't break camp with the team, I don't think he will. As long as he hits this spring and hits early in the minor league season, you could see that move eventually. And I do think, again, this is just a broad base of skills guy without a ton of immediate weaknesses, which is a kind of profile I like when you're looking at Rookie of the Year stuff, right? Like guys who might perform immediately. It might not be the kind of carrying tool you like to see, the 80 power or something like that, but it's the kind of guys that can adapt to the league relatively quickly.
Yeah, there's nothing that's going to obviously sink him upon debuting, which is
exactly
key. Yeah, like different from a profile like Jack Caglione, who we saw.
Great disparity between those two profiles. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I that's a great shout. I hadn't been thinking about him, but I really like him as a prospect and as a profile for this year.
All right, let's move on to the final team in this division. Everyone's favorite team in baseball, the Colorado Rockies. They are 300-1 to win the NL West.
I'll book that action. I'll book it.
Yeah. I felt stupid even saying it. Like, I've said it for every team. I got to say it. But yes, they're 300-1.
Why even put odds for them?
It's shocking to me they list it. Yeah, that there's anything there. Yeah.
Of course, they went 43-119 last year with a Pythag of 44-118. So they underperformed, last year. This year, their win total is sitting at 54.5. The public range is 60-73. I think I'm seeing on this team. They added Willie Castro. They added Team USA killer Michael Lorenzen, Jose Quintana. My favorite pitcher, my favorite transaction of the entire season, Tomoyuki Sagano in Colorado now. Jake McCarthy, Edward, Julian Pearson-Ole. Out the door, Orlando Arcia, Michael Toglia, Kyle Farmer, Angel Chivilli, and as we mentioned before in the San Diego section, Herman Marquez. Sean, I'm going to go first here real quick because you and I did the AL Central preview last year after the White Sox had lost 121 games and then put together a roster that was arguably worse than that 121 game roster. And I argued vehemently for the over on their win total, which I think was right around here. It was right around 54 or something like that. They said on paper, this is still just as bad as that 121 loss team. On paper, this Rockies team is probably just as bad or close to, certainly worse than a 54.5 win team. I don't want to put too much stock in anything the Rockies do yet. And I certainly don't want to put all of my faith in Paul DePodesta running a baseball team. I will say that some of the things they did this offseason seemed to be acting more like they know who they are in bringing in some of these veterans who are maybe flippable or just will eat innings. Lorenzen and Quintana raise your floor a little bit. McCarthy and Julian and Castro, whatever. I think just variance and luck and maybe a little bit more semi-competence gets them over this win total. I'm betting the over on this win total. So I'm actually in line with the public here, but I think I'm going against you, Sean.
No, I'm on the over.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I have them at 52.8, which means I'm by far the lowest in the projection market, because the next lowest aside for me, you mentioned, is at 60, which is Pacoda. They're at 60.4 last I checked. And that would still clear their highest listed win total by 5 wins. So what I do in my team futures article, I have my projection. I have all the public projections. I put out my value relative to market, but I also put out my value relative to a composite, which is half of my projection and half of the average public projection. So even though I'm only 1.3 wins above where I bet it at 51.5, the composite projection, which again is an average of my own and all of the publicly available win total projections, which I think in a case like this is kind of useful, I had them at 58.5. So over 55 is fine at 58.5. The average projection, I'd even take it to 55.5. The entire public projection market likes this team to go over. Kind of was the same with the White Sox last year. I don't know if I see a 30-win improvement like Davenport is calling for at 73, but I certainly could see a 15-win improvement, which would get them above this number. So yeah, Rockies over 51.5. Derek Carty gave this out as one of his best bets as well. I think this is kind of a bet that if you project these things, it's very difficult to get them below 50 wins. And certainly I'm by far the low man in the market at 52.8. So just a small bet for me considering my projection, but the public projections absolutely love the over here.
Craig, how do you break down a team like this? Pacoda goes, to the 50th percentile. These projection systems mostly, try to average things out. They're never going to project a team for 119 losses. It's just like they're never going to project a team for 119 wins, right? So when you look at the projections versus kind of the betting odds, what do you see in a team like this, and how do you kind of factor that in, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're bringing up the White Sox last year is a really good example of how you can't go off of last year's win total necessarily, right? Because even if you bring back the exact same team, they were never projected to lose 119, or 121 games or anything like that. So that's just not going to happen. I think there are a lot of people. It's easy to say because they are a bad team and they're filled with guys who are going to underperform or perform to their projection, which is also bad. But a lot went wrong for those teams, for Colorado last year and for the White Sox the year before, right? Like a lot of stuff that even games they should have won, they ended up losing through kind of bizarre circumstances. And it's easy to toss those bizarre circumstances into they're bad bucket, but they are different bucket. They're both can be true, right? That they're both bad and bizarre. And certainly there's interplay between that. You're going to lose in some bizarre ways when you're a really bad team, but they're not as bad as they seem. So I think that explains a lot of the gap between like last year's win total, maybe where the public is or where the books need to be to get the public to be on these teams, and where the projection systems tend to sit. I am of the mind, when we did our NLS preview on the pod, I'm working off of 60.5 wins, which is what Sean said. That's what Pacoda is at today. I'm going to take the under on 60.5 until they prove otherwise. But 54, that a 5-win gap is pretty significant. This is probably a team I would just avoid if I could personally, because even if they're bringing in, like you said, veterans like Lorenzen, Quintana, and Sugano, these are also guys almost uniquely suited to be awful in Colorado in a lot of ways. Yeah. And they will. It might be good for them long term, right? If they don't have to burn out, I don't even know if Seth Halverson is in this bullpen right at this moment, but he's probably one of their better bullpen arms, right? If they don't have to burn out some of these guys, if they want to save Chase Dollander or be careful with him this season and lean on instead these 1 year guys who they're just going to churn up this year and spit out next year, that's probably a great approach for them organizationally in the long run, but isn't necessarily going to help their win totals this year. I mean, like, it is, I laughed when they signed Quintana because, again, this is just a profile almost uniquely suited to be horrible in course. And then they signed the worst version of Quintana in Sugano. And, like, I don't know, I haven't looked at the props, but, like, if you could get home run allowed leaders, like, you got to be looking at Sugano, at Quintana, and your only fear is that eventually they'll just move on from them mid-season rather than they get a full season there. So I don't know. This is a situation I'd probably avoid if I could, but I play scared a little sometimes. I'm sure there's value in a team like this because they are so extreme. But yeah, it's a very weird situation and one that I would be scared a little bit to take the over on, just because even though these moves are justifiable in a lot of ways, I fear that they are negative on paper even so. You know what I mean?
I've mentioned this on another pod of ours when Collin brought up Sugano, but with Craig here, I have to do it again. Craig, Sugano is projected to give up more runs than strikeouts recorded on 6 of the 8 Fangraphs projections.
That's yeah. And honestly, can you blame him? Like it's hard to imagine. This is a guy who struggled with movement, who struggled with these things, in DC sorry, not DC, in Baltimore. But now he's going to a place where the ball moves even less just because of the air quality and the thinness of the air. It's just a remarkably bad fit. And if they're just going to ride it out, God bless, maybe we can take advantage of that. But I do wonder, even when they get sick of it. I just need to shout out, there was an article in the Denver Post about Chase Dollander. And look, I don't know how much we care about the fact that it is Paul DePodesta there and Josh Burns there instead of Bill Schmidt and the existing kind of infrastructure.
Maybe not immediately. I'd say give it a year and then I'll care a little bit, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, the way that this article was written, the quote that I can remember is that the Rockies now have cell phones, laptops, and know how to use AirDrop. And I thought, this is not with the times. Like, that is 15 to 20 years old that which is the concern kind of with DePodesta, right? Is that it is both the truth and the concern that he is modernizing this front office and this organization, but also modernizing them into 15 to 20 years ago, which is not remotely keeping pace with the present way that teams operate. So look, Josh Burns came over from the Dodgers. He should know a little bit more about the current state of things, but man, it's both it is to their benefit and also probably not nearly enough, at least in the short term.
PECOTA, by the way, I had to do some quick math here because they don't list actual just earned runs on their PECOTA on their player pages, but it looks like they have Sugano for 59 earned runs and 74 strikeouts this year. So they're not quite there in the earned runs versus strikeouts.
I'm disappointed. We're going to have to work on that.
Yeah, definitely
massage that one projection a little bit.
I'm hoping for some Sugano Senzatella piggyback games this year. That's the dream right there.
Did Senzatella's contract not expire? Is he still there? I thought last year was
he's listed as long relief on roster resources.
Okay,
right now.
I think he's technically in the bullpen
all time.
Yeah. Yes.
He signed through this year.
Yes. There we go. All right. Before we get out of here, let's real quick give out. We gave out a lot of bets here between all 5 teams. Favorite win total bet in this division, Zerillo.
Should mention Sugano has a $14 million team option for next year. I don't think that's going to get picked up. Padres under 85.5. You could take it down to 83. There's still some 85.5 juiced out there. 84.5 at -110 is fine. I should mention, I had said their odds to miss the playoffs earlier were plus 135. I must have moved that market because it is now minus 120-ish on the miss the playoffs. But the win total is roughly where I bet it. So definitely the win total is the better bet of the two at this point.
You said you wanted to see a negative, or you thought there should be a negative in front. So they're listening to you.
Yeah, there is now. Yeah.
Craig, you got a favorite win total bet here?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before. I think the Diamondbacks under 79.5. I just think the downside potential it's very similar to the Padres, and the Padres have a higher line. I think the Padres have more stars and a little bit of a higher floor, and it's reflected in both. But like I said, every time I look at this team, I grow more and more concerned. So I'm going with the Diamondbacks.
Favorite player props, stat leaders, awards, etc. Sean, what do you got here?
Ohtani RBI leader. I took it at 14-1. Take it down to about 8-1. And then I'll go with Webb wins leaders 20-1. Webb Cy Young is 20-1. I think either of those are great. His milestone props I like as well. 230 plus Ks is 13-1. So a bunch of big plus money ways to bet Logan Webb.
Craig?
Yeah, I didn't mention this one when we were talking about it, but one I saw was Rafael Devers. His line for home runs I saw was 30.5. I kind of like the under on that one. It's a tough park to hit home runs. He did hit plenty of home runs post trade last year, but it is a tougher park. He's been under 30 a number of years in Boston as well. He has routinely had elbow issues, so he's had elbow and shoulder kind of concerns. So between health, between the park, it's just a big park in general. I think there's a reasonable case for him ending, having a nice year, but ending under 30 home runs.
I think it's the lowest home run factor for left-handed hitters, right?
Yes. Pretty sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the triples alley, the high wall in right field. Look, he has the power to do it. I think he's a good player. I have no problem with that acquisition, anything like that. But I mean, his slugging percentage dropped from 504 in Boston last year to 460. Again, he hit 20 home runs in 90 games. That's more than enough to clear this over a full season. But I have to imagine some of that might change.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I'll go with Tatis over 26.5 home runs for my favorite player prop. All the reasons I mentioned before. It's mostly just a projections play. Everyone likes the over there, so I do too. And then finally, team-based props division, non-win total team props, I guess is how I would phrase this. Sean, what do you got here?
Yeah, Giants to finish second, plus 290 when I give it out. I like it down to about plus 250. I'm not sure what it is currently. If you can't get that, Giants to miss the playoffs at plus 215. I make that closer to plus 140. I think 2-1 or better, plus 175 is fine. You could also just kind of watch the first few weeks of the season, see how Vitello is vibing with this roster, see if he's like just sacrifice bunting in situations where he shouldn't be, or how he's managing games. Because in a potentially non-analytically inclined organization, I don't know if that's where I want to be putting my money, but that second place bet looks pretty nice right now.
Craig?
Yeah, I actually, like I said, I didn't see that. I love that bet. I think that's a great. I really like that a lot. The one I had going into this was I mentioned the Dodgers to earn the 2 seed, and I think Sean made a great point. If you're looking at that, look at other teams, especially maybe AL teams, to have the best record in baseball. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about the other side of that. But Dodgers to earn the 2 seed, again, we saw it last year. They didn't earn the 1 seed. I do worry about whether they fall far enough to end up 3 like they did. But you take what you take what's there at plus 350. I saw it I think at FanDuel. I thought not bad value for something like that.
Giants are plus 300 now, actually, DraftKings for second place. So
yeah, I think that I prefer that to my own. I think that's a great value.
I can't believe that number went up. I might have to try to bite it again. They won't let me bet it again, but I'll try to get somebody to bet it for me.
Need to take another road trip to Atlantic City.
Yeah, exactly.
My favorite bet is Diamondbacks to miss the playoffs, minus 250. That is, as we mentioned, that is off market. So if you can't get that, if it moves, whatever, my secondary option would be, as I mentioned, Dodgers to reach the LCS at minus 170. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Craig, thanks so much for being here. Anything you can find Craig on Blue Sky at wonky display names. I think CD Goldstein. 5 and Dive on the Baseball Prospectus Podcast Network. I listen to you guys every week. I'm also, you'll hear me mentioned every now and then because I build trivia games for the guys. Anything else you want to plug? Annual subscriptions, etc.
Yeah, this the book that came out. It's I'm really proud of it. We finally put Aaron Judge on the cover. Long overdue. But yeah, it's the 2026 iteration. Collin is in it. Another reason to get it. He wrote the player comments for which chapter did we have you? Kansas City.
Yeah, Royals.
Right? Yeah, and I do have to say, I know maybe not a huge segment of Kansas City fans out there. James Fegan, also a White Sox guy, wrote the wrote the Royals essay, and it is one of the funniest we've published in probably the last 5 years. One of my favorite essays. But yeah, no, it's a tremendous product. I'm really proud of it. Please check out the book. Check it out on our website. There's a books link. Go through our distributor. We've been having a lot of problems with Amazon this year. I don't precisely know why, but you'll get it faster from our distributor. And just the website, the baseballprospectus.com. It's a subscription site, but we do we don't cover bets. This is the place to go for your bets, but we do fantasy analysis. We do really good writing, good analysis, and so please check us out.
All right. Well, yeah, that'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Make sure to download the free award-winning Action Network app to follow all our action experts, and so you can track your own picks. Use promo code POD20 for $20 off an annual subscription to Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro to get started. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to catch all our division previews here on Payoff Pitch. For Sean Zerillo and Craig Goldstein, I'm Collin Whitchurch. Thanks for tuning in to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast, and we'll see you next time.